This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and NIL Game Changers. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and NIL Game Changers. Now from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
All right. And this half hour of the show brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, life, business, boat, motorcycle, RV. Bundles. They'll do everything they can to save you money while making sure you're fully insured. And customer service means everything to them. At Purdy Insurance, great pros who are great people. Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. And we're in the Sunbury Motors studio. Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15, Hummels Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. They said that they're the pros. Well, somebody who defines that in the media world, a pros pro, is Mark Wogenrich. My friend, welcome back. It's great to have you with us.
What a lovely transition. I appreciate that. Thanks, Steve.
Well, that was the one area I got an A in broadcast.
Beautiful
school.
segue, yeah. You got an A in segue.
Segue school. Well, Mark, here it is. It's spring practice. They've had 4 practices so far. Just in listening to James and maybe some other observations you picked up, what's been your general feel to this point?
It's hard to get a really, really good feel. Obviously, I haven't been there, so I don't have the view that you've had and others have had. But just gauging tone, to me, it sounds like they got the good head start. And that's why I think what you wanted to hear most from James Franklin and from the players. When you replace 3 coordinators, you are changing style on every phase of your team. No matter how much the coordinators, and James can come to agreements during the interview process, there's still a lot of stylistic and framework and just, personality-driven stuff that gets very different. So that's a shock to all 3 systems. I mean, it hasn't really been like that. James has made other changes, but they've been more staggered, except, go back to 16 when you replace 2 of the coordinators. Doing it in every phase, to me, one can be fresh start, and that's a good thing. But for a team that's 110 win, or, 110 games for a couple of years in a row, you're not going for fresh start. You're going for upgrades now, essentially. You want to go from premium economy to business class. So if you're going to make all those changes, you need to get to spring feeling comfortable that the changes are pretty well set. And it just, in terms of listening to Coach Franklin and what he said about Andy Koltelnicki and Justin Lustig and Tom Allen, they did that over the winter. That sounded like it was a grind, that he put them through a grind to get as much as they could in place so they could come out in spring practice and really be working live on a lot of the new stuff.
I know that, obviously you're not being around them, but you were around them a lot last season. There are different personalities of leadership. We saw in the Rose Bowl year, there's some really strong leaders on the team. Last year's team had more of a quiet leadership, but you've been around the Devon Ellies, and you've been around some of the others along the way, the Nick Dawkins, people like that. Are you getting a read that their leadership has the potential to be maybe more vociferous? How about that?
Those 2 in particular that you mentioned, I've been around Nick, so I was able to cover Nick a little bit in high school too. And he such a leadership personality, even going back to when he was 17, 18 years old. I think offensively that is exactly what they need. Defensively, they've had some of those personalities. Maybe they've had kind of guys like that. I think Adisa Isaac really was a guy like that in some ways last year, and then you can go back to P.J. Mustard. But Devon, to me, catching him through the end of bowl practice and and at the bowl game. Devon's a guy who I think really, really wants to do something special and wants to lead, not to do something special, but to lead something special. To me, they're very important people. You can't change personalities like Nick Singleton and Katron Allen and
That's right.
Drew Allar. You can't just, as much as they could say they want to be more vocal and they want to be bigger leaders, they can't just force feed that inject some sort of new personality into themselves. They can take certain steps, but Drew and Nick are just reserved. They just feel like reserved people. I'm sure they get around their teammates and friends and they do other things, but
yeah,
they're just not that. So when you have voices like that, they seem to be players who can do that. Sal Wormley, I think, maybe has the option or has the ability to do something like that. Theo Johnson really came into his own last year and became that personality. So it'll be interesting to see who can follow him, doing something like in doing things like that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what we have to see. We talk about the transfers coming in, but sometimes you get transfers in different ways. Ellie's coming back for an extra year. To me, it's like you'd love to have him. Akeem Beamon, love to have him.
Absolutely.
Look, for everything with Keandre Lambert-Smith that people talk about with him, I still looked at him as like you try to pluck that guy out of the transfer portal. I mean, how do you look at those three veterans in particular as to where they're not going to be the stars, but what can they mean to the structure?
I wonder, does Keandre Lambert-Smith have that ability to be the star? Really, can he? He's shown so many flashes here and there over the last couple of years that if he can harness all those moments, I think he's got the potential to be a number one receiver and to be a consistently playmaking receiver. Defensive tackles, Devon Elise and Hakeem Beamon. Yeah, you're right. They're not going to be statistical stars, but that to have them as like centerpiece anchors on that defense, to me, is an enormous value getting those two back. And when you get a fifth-year senior receiver, somebody who is now looking in KLS, somebody who's looking at this as, hey, a last chance opportunity, right? This is I want to go play NFL football. This is my year. One thing I found interesting, and James Franklin spoke yesterday, was about Zachy Wheatley. Zachy Wheatley had a great freshman year, played a lot, had a good sophomore season, but was in a rotation and was behind KJ Winston and Jalen Reed. For James Franklin to point out specifically, pretty much unasked and really go over the top to discuss how Zachy Wheatley is figuring it out, sort of thing. Those are the kind of moments you want to see in spring, and to get them, you can get them from a player like Keandre Lambert-Smith. That's what's going to take you. I think that's what's going to take Penn State really into playoff contention next year.
You talked about personalities. There's also style of play. There's certain things that Drew Allar does, and some areas where he's not as proficient. There's certain areas where Beau Pribula is proficient. How interested are you to see how Andy Koltelnicki marries style of what he wants to do with what Drew Allar does?
One of the interesting things that he mentioned yesterday was about being creative and unique and using personnel. And every coach is going to say that. But the odd examples he used was to say something like, well, we could put 8 offensive linemen on the field, if that is going to be, obviously it's hyperbole. But I think you can extrapolate that into the quarterbacks. Is he creative and unique enough to take that skill set that Beau Pribula has and can really inject into the offense outside of just maybe a couple of goal line plays or being on the field at the same time with Drew? Can he inject that into maybe the stuff that we heard from Coach Franklin last year about using Beau in situationally, maybe running him in the second quarter, giving him a series in the second quarter, giving him the offense, having a subset of plays that only Beau runs. really, and making that kind of an offshoot of the offense. Is that creative enough? Is that unique enough? And does he have the time and wherewithal to build that into his offense too? I think starting with those two guys and then having anchors behind, or starting with those two guys and having them with different styles, and then having anchors behind them, the running backs. Tyler Warren, I think, obviously is going to be an enormous value for both quarterbacks. If they can figure out ways to harness Beau with those pieces, with the running back pieces, and with Tyler Warren, I think that's where I would see maybe Andy Koltelnicki's brain kind of working overtime and worrying into just how can I get Beau into what I consider to be a creative and unique form of offense.
How interested are you to see the fit of Julian Fleming, Nolan Rucci, A.J. Harris, and others from the portal that are in the program?
Very interested because, starting on the defense, Harris and Kimber come into a place that's put a lot of, Terry Smith's done a lot of great work with the cornerbacks.
Yeah, no doubt.
And there's talent there. There's certainly talent there, but there's opportunity there as well for those guys to run as starters or at least rotate in and out. I mean, they just don't rotate a lot of cornerbacks in and out for the most part. But if you got 3 or 4, you could do that. I think they might play a little more nickelbacks next season, especially, as James Franklin said, with the safeties that they have. And Kimber and Harris, Kimber's the veteran. I'm getting that right?
Yes.
He's got a couple of years. Kimber's a veteran who's played a bunch of football, so he might be as plug and play in that group as you can have. Then with Julian Fleming, I think one of the most interesting things I've heard came from Chuck Losey, the strength coach, in discussing how Julian Fleming, he came in and just really assimilated himself into the program. And you wonder how that's going to work with veterans, somebody who's been someplace else for 4 years. Is he going to bring what he learned from that place into and especially coming from Ohio State, is he going to bring what he learned there, and is he going to say, we didn't do that at Ohio State? This is how we did it at Ohio State. Or is he going to assimilate into your values, into your workout regimen, into your, the time you work out, into how you work out, and, the exercises that you do, all of that stuff, in the way you practice, in having certain practice, periods of practice and that sort of thing. Is he going to really, is he going to believe in all that? Is he going to, as I said, assimilate into all that? Or is he going to say, this is what I know how to do, so I'm going to freelance because this is how we did it at Ohio State? It sounds like he's not doing that. And I think that's a really important thing. When you've got a fifth-year senior who's a veteran who can come in and say, yes, coach, I think that rubs off on a lot of the younger players.
Yeah. Agreed. We all know it's expanding to 12 this year. They're still negotiating the possibility starting in 26 of 14. What's your thought on getting 12, and what do you think it means to the game that it's going to be? I mean, the sport of college football, that there's going to be 12.
That seems like a way station to me. Is there really a whole lot of difference between 12 and 14? Just
nope.
Structurally, you're not going to add. You don't add another week of playoffs. I don't think. That's where I'm going to get is once we go 14, then it's going to be 16, and then 24. How many weeks of playoffs are we going to add, and then how does the college football season just dissolve its value, the regular season of college football? I'm still very much a regular season college football person, and I'm antiquated. I like the bowl system. I know it's not the best way to determine a champion. It's not the best. Certainly it's not the best way to determine a college football, a national champion. But I think the bowl system fits the sport and the time of year and our culture so very well that I I hate to see that. I just hate to see that go away. You know, again, it's a bit of get off my lawnishness. Mm. So I hope it can coexist. It can't coexist. The bowl system simply can't coexist with, you know, maybe even a 16-team playoff, or certainly not a 24, or or 20 or 24 or 32 team playoff. I think it still can with a 12, as long as players are incentivized to play in certain, in the bowl games. I still think there's value in seeing 13 versus 15 in the Citrus Bowl or something like that. I still think that absolutely does have value, but I'm on board with 12. I probably would even be on board with 14 because, again, I don't know that I see much of a scheduling difference. But, man, as soon as you start to stretch that, my 1980s are going to come back to me and say, I missed the Blockbuster Bowl,
Yeah. Well, you know what? I mean, as long as they are combining, I don't mind. I think home sites are exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
That's the best part of it to me.
I like the fact that in the 12 they are incorporating the New Year's Six bowls. To me, that keeps at least that kind of structure in place because, in my opinion, contrary to what I think some people believe, the bowls have been great for college football. And I don't think they get enough credit for being great for college football because they, at least in one form or another, gave it a postseason.
Yeah, to me, it's a very different postseason. Like I said, I do think it marries sport, time of year, and our culture. March is a time, right? The NCAA tournament is a time. These 3 weeks, heading into April, this is very much a time on the calendar. The week between Christmas and New Year is a time on the calendar that fits college football just perfectly, in my opinion. That's a great week to watch, 24 bowl games, or catch parts of 24 bowl games, or let's be honest about it, bet on 24 bowl games. So I think it works. It just works. So I hate to see that time of year get diluted at the bottom. Like the bottom of it either get diluted or dissolved in order to build a property that benefits a minimal number of teams. There's still 68 basketball teams. So there's a lot of opportunity for mid-majors and small programs. If you dissolve the bowl system to grow the playoff system, you're going to mitigate the rest of college football, and it's going to be, I know we're headed there, but it's going to be 45 teams or 52 teams or something like that really can even play at that level.
Always a pleasure. Mark, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. Hope to see you soon.
Same here, Mark. The outstanding Mark Wogenrich joining us on the show today. We'll take a break. This half hour of the show brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is because it's Brewers Outlet time. The Beverage Supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.
Spring has sprung, and it's time to dust off those insurance policies. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855 or visit our website at purdyinsurance.com to see what we can do for you.